So there's something quite special about the original Teenage Mutant game that people who grew up with it still remember quite clearly, even if they also remember how brutally difficult it could be at times. It was released for the NES in 1989. It was one of those games that could make you feel like a ninja 1 minute, then just completely obliterate with the next one. You had Leonardo, Donatella, Michelangelo, Raphael, a city full of enemies, dangerous stages, strange jumps, some genuinely memorable moments, and just so much charm to it. A modern remake could keep that old school attitude while finally giving the game the controls and the presentation it always actually really deserved back then. And the biggest improvement would have to be just basically the movement. Since the original had some awkward jumps, really awkward movements and jumps, controls that could turn certain sections into some pure frustration, especially the water level. So obviously a remake shouldn't make everything easy, but it should make every death feel like the player's mistake rather than the controls fighting against them. And each turtle of course could have a clear personality through movements, with like Leonardo feeling balanced, Donatella using the long reach, Raphael attacking quickly at close range, and Michelangelo of course sitting somewhere between speed and power. On the other hand, then the city itself could become much more interesting. Instead of moving through some simple 8-bit backgrounds, players could now finally see what New York looked like in the imagination of the original game. Streets would be like packed with cars, rooftops would stretch between buildings, sewer tunnels would feel enormous, and the turtles' world would have that perfect mixture of comic book color and nightmare danger, meaning the game could still move from one stage to another, but every location should feel somewhere the turtles actually live and fight through. And combat could remain simple because that's part of the charm, so to speak. Hit enemies, switch turtles, grab weapons, and keep moving. The difference would then come from modern animations and better enemy behavior, like foot soldiers could attack in groups, enemies could react differently depending on which turtle you're using, stronger villains could force you to change your approach instead of just simply hitting them repeatedly, and for that matter, the bosses would be a major highlight then. Bebop and Rocksteady could finally feel as ridiculous and dangerous as they should, while bosses like Baxter and Shredder could have much more personality. Shredder specifically deserves a fight that feels like the payoff to everything that you've survived, with the entire environment becoming part of the battle itself. And then there's of course the infamous Dam stage, the classic side-scrolling brawler that defined the arcade's TMNT for an entire generation. And according to ongoing online discussions and industry speculations and lots of other stuff, there have reportedly been conversations about revisiting older TMNT games in a larger modern format after the success of the recent Turtle projects. And of course, that alone has a lot of people excited, especially the fans. Because if developers really decided to remake TMNT 2 properly, they could just turn a simple arcade classic into something much bigger without losing the soul of the original. And honestly, that soul is the most important part. The game should still feel fast, fun, easy to understand, 4 turtles fighting together through waves of enemies with New York slowly turning into chaos around them. That formula still works pretty well today. In fact, players are probably more hungry for straightforward co-op fun games now, more than ever. Modern gaming became so focused on giant open worlds, complicated systems, endless crafting, and massive progression trees that people started missing games that simply feel fun from the first minute. TMNT naturally fits that space perfectly, but a remake, also creates opportunities the old arcade hardware could never even begin to imagine, let alone achieve. Imagine those original levels rebuilt with modern detail and cinematic presentation. Rain-covered streets glowing under neon signs, subway tunnels shaking as trains pass nearby during fights, rooftop battles overlooking a nighttime New York skyline. The city itself could become far more immersive while still keeping the arcade spirit very much alive. That balance matters because fans don't want the game to lose its energy. The best TMNT games always move with confidence. The fast pacing, strong music, you see distinct personalities between the turtles. A remake should expand the world without slowing everything down too much. And modern technology could make the combat feel incredible. Leonardo's sword strikes could feel precise and controlled. Raphael's attacks could feel heavier and more aggressive. Michelangelo could move faster with wider combo chains. Donatello's reach and staff combat could create more tactical crowd control. The important thing is making every turtle feel unique without making things complicated. See, there's one area modern remakes sometimes get wrong. They over-design systems that were originally simple. Well, obviously TMNT worked best when players could jump in quickly and immediately just feel the power. Simple controls, satisfying hits, smooth movements, that's the formula. Now, one of the biggest things fans seem to want from this remake is proper cinematic storytelling, added around the original structure. Well, the arcade game barely focused on story, because technology didn't allow much back then, but modern players expect more connection to the world and the characters. That doesn't mean turning the game into a slow movie or whatever, it means adding atmosphere. More conversations between the brothers, more scenes showing the city under pressure, more tension surrounding Shredder's and the Foot Clan, small moments inside the sewer hideout where the family dynamic actually breathed a little bit. A remake could turn that underwater section into something genuinely exciting instead of just something players remember for the wrong reasons. Swimming could feel smooth, the screen could be easier to read, the level could use the environment to create tension without making the player fight the controls or whatever, and the story doesn't need to become complicated either. This is, still the Turtles. Splinter has been kidnapped, April needs help, Shredder is causing trouble, and 4 mutant brothers are going to solve the problem by beating up almost everyone they meet. Give the characters more dialogues and personality, but keep the adventure moving. Most importantly, in fact, the remake should understand why these characters work so well together. Leonardo is disciplined, Donatello is clever, Raphael is aggressive, and of course Michelangelo is one who can turn almost any dangerous situation into a joke. Let them talk, argue, joke around, and actually feel like brothers while they travel through New York. The original TMNT didn't need a giant open world or hundreds of different mechanics, it just needed better technology around the same basic idea. 4 turtles, 1 city, lots of enemies, 1 very angry Shredder. That's the feeling that developers absolutely need to protect, because graphics can improve, combat can evolve, worlds can become bigger, but the reason people still remember and love TMNT after all these years is much simpler than all of that. It's a feeling of stepping into New York at night beside these characters and believing, even for a little while, that no matter how dangerous the city becomes, the Turtles will always show up when it matters most. So a proper remake could take that simple formula and just turn it into the definitive version of the first Turtles adventures, while finally making the game as fun to play as it was always really supposed to be. Hopefully, we're going to be seeing that sometime sooner rather than later.